And that's the show, everybody. Thanks for being here. I want to thank our guests for being here. So, no.
Please like, comment, subscribe.
That's right.
Hello, everybody in chat. How's it going? We'll see how much of a delay that we have with this, but...
Aaron, do you have anything you want me to plug for you online, or...
Plug?
Yeah, do you have anything you want me to plug for you, or...
I would like to thank my family for always being here for me. No. I mean, I wasn't prepared to have anything plugged.
That's perfectly fine.
Shout out to my peeps at Winter Iron Game Studios, I guess.
There you go.
There you go.
Those are the only people I know, so...
That's perfectly fine, too.
But you're part of the Let's Plays over there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's my family.
There you go. Okay, so... It says nice pickup line, Ryan. Oh, goodness.
I thought it was Winterian too. So even the people who are in Winter Isle thought it was pronounced differently.
I think that's the same thing I said to Matt when we had him on for Halo last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I feel like it's canon now. It's a personal meme. But yeah, I wasn't prepared. I didn't have a webcam ready. I've never owned one, so here we are.
Perfect excuse right there. I'll take it.
So are we live yet?
Yeah, we are. We are live. So
We've been live for the past hour.
No, we haven't been live for the past hour.
I'm looking for like material to do post-credit stuff here. My Avengers post-credit stuff that I normally like to put in after the music at the end of the show, but I don't know if we got enough for anything here.
Yeah, so I guess, is everyone ready for end Game of Thrones spoilers?
That's right.
Oh.
We're not going to do that.
Let's go.
It's a live show. We can read it for the dozens of people in the chat here.
Wait, I thought that's why we were here. I have like a year's worth of notes on all of the spoilers.
This is just from hour 1 of Endgame. Well, so I guess we're ready to start this. Or we can always wait longer. That doesn't bother me none.
I also have to apologize. I usually have a better webcam, and I might have been sitting in my game room as opposed to my kitchen, but I was like, I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to be on camera or not, so maybe the kitchen would have better internet.
The show is free, so I don't care. You know, the show is free for people. You know.
Yeah, so that'll be worth just acknowledging that this is a thank you to everyone who's here in the chat, hanging out with us tonight as we do this for the first time, truly free and live. This is exciting times. So
Wait, this was free? I paid to be here.
Who did you pay?
If it's P1,
Yeah.
you should ask for your money back. But yeah, we can get started whenever you guys want. And again, if we need to break for cut for edit, we can always do that for that. Now, chat, I will say there will come a point later in the show where we are asking about community impressions of this game. We have a couple of them that we got on Twitter, but if you have any thoughts on the game, just type them in the chat. I don't know if you should do them in all caps or something so that they stand out, just so it's not confused for other things, but I promise that my Twitch chat bot won't erase everything that you've written for using caps. Because for some reason, it really doesn't like people doing that.
They're right, though. You're really glowing. What did you use Tell us.
What am I using?
What are your
The El-
secrets?
the
Your
Elgato
skin is just
lugs?
glowing. You're like the
My-
Jesus of this podcast.
So I have the Elgato key light over here. I have my studio light, like my like box light over here. Actually, I'll just do this, like one of those deals over there,
So you got
and
the
one of these
professional
deals up there.
lighting.
And then back here, there's a couple of little like clip lamps there that have different colored light bulbs in them. Behind the scenes.
So I spent a lot of money getting box lights and everything like that, and I actually find I get better lighting from just a stand-up lamp with a daylight bulb than I do with my box lights.
That's
Yeah,
really good. Yeah.
My issue with this light is the time it takes to set up. Like that's the biggest annoyance,
Yeah.
and the fact that the bulb is like huge.
Oh, you take yours apart.
Well, for a while there, I was like, I would like set it up once a week and take it down once a week, and it has impacted my ability to make videos on a regular basis. So I have a better solution now, and one of them involves this deal. So
We set up this podcast to rate the best lighting for streaming, so
there you go.
enjoy.
That's entirely what it is. I will say it is a little bit glowy, so I don't know if I'm just.
Uh-oh.
It
Now
could
you're
just
sweating and the pressure.
It could just be nerves.
Are
or
these
something.
lamps hot in here?
That's right.
Oh, boy.
I need a fan or something. We have lots of fans, and they're all in the chat.
Oh.
Oh, that's right. Okay, Ryan, whenever you're ready, get started, man.
All right.
But yeah, chat, if you have impressions for Zelda 2, go ahead and you can, at some point during the show, until the time when we start reading them, go ahead and type those and we'll try and grab them. And
But it'll be a lot easier if you go to the Cartridge Club Twitter, where I have open right now. And I can
okay.
click the
You can do that
responses.
too.
It's a lot easier. But we're only choosing the 4 best. So,
Oh, okay. Ryan is restricting it to 4.
yeah.
Unless you pay enough money.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Patreon, we established if you're Patreon, then yes, you'll get read. But I hate reading, so yeah, you got to pay to play. All right, I'm going to start this here now. So, hello, gamers, and thank you for tuning into another episode of the Cartridge Club. The Cartridge Club is a community of gamers, collectors, content creators, and gaming enthusiasts of all generations. The show that you're listening to is effectively a monthly book club, but for gamers. We pick a game, invite everyone in the club to play along, and select a couple of community members to come on the show to discuss this game. My name is Ryan, and I'm one of the hosts for the show. Without any further ado, let me introduce the panel for this month. We have Cherrybomb, aka Aaron.
Hello.
And MichaelBtheGameGenie.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you so much for finally having me on. I'm really excited.
Awesome. I didn't know this. Is this both your first times?
Yep.
Awesome. I can't
Yeah,
believe the Cartridge Brothers didn't do this before. Oh well.
I didn't like specifically join the Cartridge Club. I just kind of got adopted into it by like joining in on little I guess scenarios when you guys would have the charity streams, and I joined in on one. It's like, okay, you're part of the family now.
Yeah, we draw that dotted line for the club pretty liberally, and just we like to embrace as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, now that we got that out of the way, I'm going to hand it over to my co-host MustyHobbit. Let us know what game we're playing for this month.
Excellent, thank you, Ryan, and thank you for being here again for another month of the Cartridge Club. And this is the first month that we are officially doing this show live on YouTube, as well as doing our audio version. So, of course, we had to pick a big marquee title. And so for this month, we are playing Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link for the NES. And we're pretty excited to get into this. We have a couple of panel members here who, as I understand, think very highly of this game, and so hoping to really shine some light onto why this game gets such a bad rap. So we'll go ahead and get into that here right after we do the breakdown. And then this part I just sort of try and do my big radio voice for. This is a fun part. If I can do this.
Are we cutting here for a sec?
Yeah, sure.
I have a question. So I don't know if it's where it is because I have the thing open on the side, but I have it muted. But I hear it's still playing in the background somewhere, even though I don't have anything else open. I hear our stream here.
Do you have maybe the YouTube browser of it going right now? Because it's on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what I have, but I turned it off just to see if it was gonna still be played.
Interesting. Because I usually pop the chat out and then close the window behind it and then.
Yeah, true. Well, anyways, we can keep going. I'll figure it out.
Okay. All right. Here we go. On the heels of arguably one of the most influential NES titles, 1989's Oh, I already botched it. We're starting over. On the heels of arguably one of the most influential NES titles, 1989's Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link sets to evolve the series beyond its explorative roots. As Link, you are told that Zelda has been put into a spell, and only by acquiring the Triforce of Courage can she be woken. What follows is an adventure across Hyrule to place six crystals in 6 palaces, which will unlock the Great Palace holding your final goal and a face-off against your own shadow. The game even graced the cover of issue 4 of Nintendo Power and was immortalized in its own line of fruit snacks. Looking back, the game was critically acclaimed upon release, but has now been viewed as the black sheep of the Zelda franchise. But let's hear what our panel has to say about their overall thoughts on Zelda 2. So and Aaron, we'll start with you with overall impressions, and then we'll dive into the nitty-gritty after that.
Okay. So yeah, my overall impression of the game is, so it took me so many months to get through it when I finally sat down to play it. But compared to other games that are super frustrating and grindy, I thought this felt so rewarding at the end. So I feel like whether you're playing Zelda 2 in the early 90s or, currently, it just feels super innovative, regardless of how repetitive the scenery or gameplay can feel at times. So it just throws you into a world that implores you to be curious about exploring, or patient and grinding out experience, and creative in how you use spells and tools in order to solve puzzles and such. And I know this isn't Miyamoto's proudest work, but he compares it similarly to a paper in high school that I just throw together at the last second and be like, you know what, I'm not going to revise this. It's good, whatever. But even then, even though he sells it short, I feel like the gameplay is really fluid, and the game is challenging. But I feel like when you're done playing it, you could just, you're like, I actually did something really impressive, and it was. I think it's fun. I don't know. Other people don't think it's fun, but yeah, the soundtrack got me through it.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, that's great. Michael, how about you? Overall thoughts on a game that you just finished minutes ago?
I did. But how am I supposed to follow that? That was really well done. I'm just going to say the game's really good. That's pretty much all I can really say. She thought hers out much more than I did.
It said give your high opinion or something, or go in depth. And I was like, okay, well, do we need a sentence or do we need an essay?
So
by the time we're done, we'll hit essay levels, I think, on some of these things. But
fair enough.
Yeah, I was always afraid of Zelda 2. I remember playing this as a kid at my nephew's house, and it always seemed so much more challenging and different than The Legend of Zelda. So I completely shied away from this, and I played every single game in the series up until I think it was around the time when Skyward Sword came out, before I actually finally decided, enough's enough. I'm going to make my way through Zelda 2. So the first time I finished it was around that time, and like she said, at first it's very challenging, and that may turn some people off, because after you get through the first palace and you get to Death Mountain right away, right before you go to Palace 2, I mean, that's enough to turn anybody off from the game for some reason. But if you stick with it and play through it, you're going to get one of the very best experiences on the NES. Why do people dislike it? I think we're going to get into that later. It's just not what people played the first time. But if you can get through the challenge, if you can get through the difficulty, and the difference the differenceness is not even really a word, but I'm going to use it, of The Legend of Zelda and compare it to this game, you're going to find something truly special because, in my opinion, it's one of the best games on the system. And like she said, most rewarding games to finish.
Absolutely. So Ryan, I want to hear your thoughts, because I think that we may be in a situation where it's 3-on-1 here. But I want to hear your overall thoughts on Zelda 2 here.
Yeah, this game sucks. I hate it. and this was coming from I claim myself to be a Zelda fan. This was the first time I beat it, but I don't know. I don't like to think it's tracked to a history. I have a little bit of a history with this game. I wasn't a big fan of the original NES either Zelda games growing up as a kid. Even the Super Nintendo one, it was just something I didn't understand growing up, and didn't become a Zelda fan really till Ocarina of Time came out. But after beating Ocarina of Time, and I loved that game, I decided I kind of wanted to go back and give these games when I was younger another shot to see if there was something I like. So I tracked down copies for the first two games at a used used video game store, if you will, as a pawn shop or something. But I obtained them. I had to use guides, and at the time, this was out of high school, I went to GameFAQs.com and printed all my guides off because the computer room didn't really manage that kind of thing back in the day. But yeah, I beat the first game, ended up loving the first game after playing it years down the road. And then I struggled my way through the second game, made it all the way to Shadow Link. Didn't know about the little trick to beating them, but tried taking them square on, couldn't take it anymore. So I saved my copy of my game, came back a couple hours after eating, and my file was completely gone. So that was enough to make me never wanted to play it again until just now. It kind of was a bucket list because I've over the years have beaten every single console Zelda game. And I this one always kind of eked me that I got so close that I could never beat it, but I beat it this month. But for reasons why I don't like it, I really hate the gameplay for this game. I feel as if the hitboxes on the enemies are too small, especially later in the game. The difficulty really starts to ramp up. I don't think the platforming is very great in this game. I think it's missing some of the things that make some of the other Zelda games, I guess some of the gameplay for it, like the weapons. I'll give you an example. It's missing like boomerangs and arrows and hook shots and bombs. Now they replaced that with spells kind of as a different thing, but I mostly just used health regeneration. And man, your health drains so fast in this game, and your magic drains so fast in this game, even when you max it out. So
are you sure that's not just a you thing, Ryan?
Maybe it is, but and that tallies back into the gameplay with smaller hitboxes of enemies. Your sword doesn't go very far. Even when you're at full health and you could shoot the beam out your sword, it doesn't affect every enemy. It only really affects some of the weaker enemies in the game. So with that being said, that's some of the main reasons I don't enjoy this game.
Okay, that's fair, and we'll get into some of the specifics. We'll hit gameplay pretty soon here because that seems like something that you're ready to have a good convo about. For me, I really like this game. I remember playing this through. I actually don't remember if it was me who finished it when I was in like third grade. But I was in the room as it was happening. I remember some of the just kind of terrifying bosses and the challenge that was all inherent in the whole thing. I really liked it. I really enjoyed playing through it, and I felt like I really started to get into some of the patterns. And once you start to unlock some of the stuff later in the game, especially the other attacks, the up stab and the downward stab, like those, there's a reason why those things are still so prominent now in anything that Link is associated to, especially Smash Brothers and things like that. We'll get into that, but yeah. So it sounds like it's gonna be 3-on-1 on this one. We have not had one where Ryan and I have been split yet, so this is going to be interesting as we get into that. But let's get into. It seems like gameplay seems to be a big sticking point for a lot of people on this game. There is some major differences as far as how they have made this game versus the original and then subsequent Zeldas as well. How about, let me just ask you, Michael, do you want to talk about what makes this Zelda unique by comparison to the other ones in the series from a perspective and from a like just general gameplay standpoint?
One is side scrolling.
Yeah, so we're along the lines of platforming Mario a little bit.
I feel like that's cool. What makes it unique? There's side scrolling. We got
Right.
it.
That's it. No, if I remember correctly, I think that they were actually developing both the Legend of Zelda games roughly around the same time, the first Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2. And for whatever reason, they went with the first Legend of Zelda and then still ended up going with Zelda 2. Is that correct?
That both were being made at the same time?
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, I just heard that last week on a notable YouTuber video that came out.
Yeah, I think I watched the same review,
Yes.
SNES Drunk, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess they decided that the first game, The Legend of Zelda, fit more of what Miyamoto's idea was. Everybody knows the story about him going into caves and playing with things when he was younger, and he wanted to translate that into a video game experience. But the second game has so much of that too. It's side-scrolling. It's a different experience. The combat is certainly much more challenging because they've actually developed a way to do this dueling process. And I know that the hitboxes is smaller and people are frustrated with that, but I think that plays into the whole dueling dynamic that they were trying to create. So I think that's intentional, not a fault in the game.
That's fair. Yeah, there are some enemies. I mentioned patterning, right? You would get into a rhythm with certain ones, especially the Iron Knuckles, which are the knights with the shields. That once you really get the rhythm down for those guys, breeze for the most part, except for the blue ones because they throw swords and they're total jerks. But it seems like once you kind of figure out, there's a lot of games that have that where you sort of, once you figure out the hook on getting a specific enemy type, then suddenly they are no longer as much of a challenge anymore. Now, Ryan, you mentioned the progression aspect as something that you didn't like, right? The leveling, the grinding.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I mean, I hate grinding in any game. And one thing I can think of comparing to other Zelda games is there isn't really experience points, right? This is the only one I can think of that has an experience point system. Most of the other ones are like you beat a boss, you get a heart piece, or you go exploring, you find more heart pieces, and that's how you get stronger in Zelda games. This one, you're just gonna have to like keep attacking monsters. Now, eventually got a little bit easier by the time I got to the third palace, because it's not dungeons in this game, it's palaces. I discovered through a guide that if you hit the statues that look like the warriors, if you will, you can either get a magic bottle or you'll get a warrior, and these warriors will give you 100 XP, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the red Iron Knuckles are 100 XP.
So yeah, so like you do that, you leave the screen, you come back, you keep doing that over and over. If you take damage, you hope you get a magic bottle so you can refill your health, and then you do it over and over again. This part wasn't so bad. I mean, I would put a baseball game on in the background so I could have someone listening to, and I would just do this for an hour or so. And eventually, by the time I got to the third palace, I found myself, I'm just going to max myself out before I progress any further, make this game a little bit more easier to take down. Yeah, and I did that, and I think I eventually even didn't know about once you're maxed out and you select the level up feature, you get a 1-up. So
Yeah.
like I thought maybe level 9 might have been the max level, but no, it's 8. So 8 across the board. It's 8 for your magic, 8 for your hearts, and 8 for your weapon attack. But yeah, I mean, if you like grinding in any kind of game, then this might be your alley. But I prefer the other way of leveling up in other Zelda games over this.
I think that's fair. No, I think there are some other tricks. Granted, yes, I took full advantage of, especially Palace 3, and I think Palace 6. I did a fair bit of grinding at that opening moment. The other thing that is important to note is that when you finish a palace, by placing the crystal in the statue at the end of the palace, it automatically fills you to that next thing that you were building on. So you can get really strategic there, and if you can level within the palace, you can then have basically an automatic fill on one immediately following it, which is hugely advantageous. And it almost forces you to get a certain number of levels throughout the game. But yeah, I get where you're at, Ryan, on grinding as for grinding's sake, but like especially later on, like yes, you can get 100 XP from those iron knuckles. There are enemies though, just if you wander around that hidden palace, that are like 200. They're just a little more. They're a little more tricky, and there's not as much of the opportunity for refilling your magic.
If you ever decide to play it again, the bouncing balls that are in the castles, they're actually relatively easy to kill, and they drop 50 XP every time you kill them. So that's usually what I use to level up if I'm finding it a little bit too challenging. Like they take 1,000,000 hits, but it's pretty much a no-brainer. Like you're going to kill them. So you'll find like an easy screen where they'll bounce at you, kill it, 50 points, go off screen, and you're right back. So I found that to be the quickest way to level in the game.
And those are somewhat predictable too. Unlike some of the other palace enemies get a little more tricky there.
Yeah, there's a big part in Cathedral 5. I keep getting confused here if it's Cathedral, Palace, because they're called different things in different books depending on what you read.
Oh, sure.
But where you're talking about, I forget what they're called, but they're like kind of the floating eyeballs in the room that drops the blocks on you. And they're the ones that if you hit them, you'll get either between 50 and 200 points. So most people do their bulk of their leveling up in that section.
That's interesting. Yeah, I made a point of not watching a bunch of speedrunners this month, although there's some even in our community who have made a point of speedrunning this game, and some of these strategies to sort of speed grind this is really interesting. I feel like I kind of took the leisurely route this time around, but yeah. Now, it's worth noting we're spending quite a bit of time talking about grinding on this. It's worth noting.
One big grind.
Yeah,
she's not wrong.
No, if you're not grinding for levels, this game is like from a challenge perspective. This game hits really, really well. And Aaron, you were talking about how fulfilling it felt to put this one in the rearview mirror. And are there other games on, like games in general, that you would like put into the same tier as that? I'm just curious where your barometer is on the difficulty of this game in comparison to others.
Well, in terms of what I've played, I would have to think about that one. I honestly, one of the ones on my list right now is Ninja Gaiden, because it's honestly I suck at that game. But I feel like, honestly, do you think that would be tougher than this one? Because it's a lot more fast paced, but it's also a side scrolling platformy type game that involves some strategic, skill sets. So I don't know. That one's on my list definitely to see, so I can compare the two in terms of difficulty. But in terms of games that I've personally beaten, this is probably the toughest one I've actually finished.
That's awesome. Well,
I've wanted to finish Castlevania, the first one for the NES, but that one's still on my list too. I feel like I need to be on cool. Honestly, so this is a little bit of a disclaimer here. So I know everyone worked hard to finish this game in time for the podcast. The last time I beat this game was in, I think I said 2015, 2014. I had the screenshot I posted on Twitter, but It's been a long time. I just don't have the commitment that I used to or time because I'm trying to expand and play other games here.
Hey, that's totally fair. You still have a good enough feel for this, and yeah, like it's never a requirement to play the game. It always helps though, especially if it has been a while or if you need a refresher on it. But yeah, the way you described it earlier, I wouldn't have known any different, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, so I don't know how long it took everyone to beat this game, but it took me over the course of, I think, on and off for 6 months because I did a lot of grinding. I honestly enjoy grinding in games like this because it kind of feels like I spent my time with purpose to achieve something good. So I'd put on a podcast and keep the Zelda 2 soundtrack and sounds going in the background. And I feel like it was kind of a good time. I'm the person who always goes out of their way in RPGs, like Final Fantasy games and what have you, and tries to find like the juiciest grinding spots available, and I'll just park myself there for a couple hours every day. I'll play it, and it's kind of a bragging right of my past self to my future self. Because I mean, honestly, no one else cares but me, so that's kind of why I do it.
Oh, that's great. For those, I should say, for those who are maybe haven't played this game and are maybe curious, if the whole concept of grinding is something that you're not a fan of, and if you really want to if you wanted a way to just snap your fingers and be like, I don't want to do any of that, you can. The Switch NES online service has a Zelda 2 SP mode, which basically circumvents all of that level grinding. You basically start off with 8s across the board on that. So that is a great way. Ryan, I understand that you played it through on original hardware because you have hang-ups with playing ways.
I don't want to do baby mode. I'm all about
baby mode.
It's nice that Nintendo invented baby mode. For people who don't want to put in any work at all, just want to do it. And hey, it's cool. It's part of the Stallion service. But yeah, I wouldn't consider. I would say cool. You beat Zelda 2 SP. You didn't beat Zelda 2. You beat the baby mode. So let me know when you come back to regular Zelda 2. And we'll chalk it up. So I consider
to those listening, if you feel personally attacked by Ryan right now, please send your emails to contact@cartridgeclub.org and we can talk about it. Anyways.
We're going to talk about save states later too, right?
Oh, we will.
Not on my end.
If we have to, we can. But I really like to talk more about the game first, and I think we talked about kind of the departure from the overhead view of Zelda 1, and just kind of how this one visually looks dramatically different than every other Zelda game. And let's see, who wants to talk about the graphics and their thoughts on the graphics? Does anybody want to jump at that one?
I mean, I don't have a ton to say about the graphics, but I feel like, especially for their time, they were clean and fresh. Like, so you were saying that they were making this around the same time as Zelda 1, was that right?
Yeah, that's what was reported by our friend Snistrunk.
That is a fun fact I never knew.
Yeah, I think he was saying that both games came out on the Famicom prior to Zelda 1 being released in the States.
Yeah.
So really, that's trying to think of other games that have taken that approach of have like two like very, very like, it seems like they gave them similar notes and said, you do this and you do this, and to get such varying graphical styles that still kind of feel somewhat similar, I think is really interesting. But I like the look of Link's sprite on this, and you see a lot of it, so you better get used to it.
Yeah, I do too. It kind of, in a way, maybe it's the colors of it, but it kind of reminds me of Jill of the Jungle in a way for PC. I played that game a lot. So maybe it's the color scheme, but that's what it reminds me of.
I can see that. I'm not familiar with that game. True. For the PC.
You're right.
if I could complain about the graphics, I will say that I don't
Go
like.
ahead, Ryan. Go
I
ahead.
don't like how the overworld looks. The regular 2D side scrolling part is fine, and it looks fine, and the graphics are good for that. But I don't like the overworld look. So there's something to pile on here. So
Okay.
Do you think that you would enjoy how it looked better if you liked the gameplay more?
maybe, but that's not. It's not really like something that breaks the game for me. It's not like it's not like a deal breaker. But it's just something that stands out. I guess if it's more, salt, to go on here.
I like the contrast.
So I'm a big fan of this game, but I'm going to take the opposite opinion here. I don't think the graphics are that good in this game. I find the towns look very strange, almost like they're rushed or unfinished at times. Like Link's character sprite is fine and stuff like that. And like the character sprites are all really, really good, but I find a lot of the backgrounds in the towns and, like he said, the overworld map, there's just something like you look at a palace and like even the first one you start in, and it's like it's just an MS Paint sprite or something like that, just dabbed right in the middle of this kind of like jungle.
I could see that.
Yeah,
it almost just looks like a Roman numeral, right?
Yeah,
a little bit. That is a good point there, because it takes that grid approach.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, there's just something about it to me that seems like, I don't know, something feels unfinished with like the way the towns look and the way the overworld looks.
Well, because there's nothing. Oh, sorry, Aaron.
Oh no, you're fine.
I was going to say there's nothing beyond the ground in the buildings. Right? There is no. They could have done some parallax deal. Even some of the other games that have taken cues from this, most notably Battle of Olympus, has depth to it beyond the just the foreground that you're in. So I totally see where you're coming from there, especially in those settings specifically. I think the temples graphically have a nice feel to them, but again, you're not. They look like temples. So I guess it's to be expected.
Yeah.
But Aaron, you were gonna say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it kind of the fact that it seems maybe the backgrounds are a little bit more plain kind of takes me back to how my moto is saying, yeah, so we kind of made a rough draft and we never really improved on it. So maybe that was the same thing with the graphics too. But I feel like with it being kind of basic or plain or just not really fleshed out, maybe it doesn't really take away from the foreground and the combat and stuff. So I guess there's two sides to it.
I can see that. I'll allow it. I'll allow us to be split on the graphics there. Yeah. Let's roll into. We talk about one of the things about this game that I think gets overlooked. The thing about the first two Zelda games is they have a little scroll that kind of like a scroll at the beginning. If you just sit on the opening a track screen, right, the start screen, it gives you a little bit of story. There's actually a much deeper story to this game than is shown on that screen, and the manual actually has it's like 12 pages worth of story. I don't go into all of it, but what I want a couple of like the big notable points is that this is the same Link as the first game. However, it is not the same Zelda. And apparently the reason for that is that let me see. The notes that I had was that there was an issue with some magician that ended up. Ryan, I think you kind of summarized this for me a lot better.
Yeah. So
do you want to talk about the story a little bit?
Sure. So while listening to reading the guide and through the website Zelda Dungeon, which makes the best Zelda guides on the internet. So if you're ever playing Zelda, I really do recommend you check them out for any game. They point out that there's actually a story to it that's not really described in the opening credits, and it really has to do with Zelda's brother, the Prince of Hyrule. And the story behind it is kind of that the king of Hyrule, passed away, and the prince of Hyrule thought he would be getting the part of the Triforce that it would show up on his hand. Well, it never did show up. The crest never showed up on his hand, which made it think, it eventually appeared as Zelda. And there's a magician that kind of comes around and kind of convinces the prince that, that what's it called? Sorry, I'm trying to read through my notes here.
It's a little convoluted. I'll just say that.
The magician kind of tricks the prince into casting a spell on Zelda, and essentially, basically the magician is essentially the bad guy, the main bad guy behind this. And I think they tied into the wizard from A Link to the Past.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
or the same like parallel, like his alter ego or something.
Yeah, so there's a little bit more story to it, and it's not really in the game. I don't know if it's so much in the books, but it's more in depth on like I said, Zelda Dungeon, where I think it's a little bit more fascinating, where the prince kind of tricked them in there, and eventually it comes down to I believe, because the prince is trying to get the wizard is trying to get to eventually revive Ganon.
So one of the big notes is at the end of the first game, right? You defeat Ganon and he turns into like a pile of ash, and you just sort of stomp on it and walk away. Apparently this wizard has like gathered that, and all he needs is a drop of Link's blood to revive Ganon, and so that's where your game over screen comes from, right? You've expended your lives,
which is terrifying, by the way, as a kid. Dude, I was like 4.
And then one, I guess, other detail is that the prince was, when he found out the magician was like betraying him, that he was going to name every princess should be named Zelda from going forward, right? For every daughter, every female will be named Zelda going forward. So it's just one little other thing, I guess, about the game. It's just a little fascinating backstory that I don't think many people really know about when it comes to this game. So.
Especially those who have just bought the cartridge and have not gone so far as to look for everything else.
You don't like sit and wait for like the Star Wars scroll at the beginning to show you the basics of the story. Yeah.
Exactly.
Just jump right in just to die right away.
Yeah. So obviously, so we've got our Link, we've got our Zelda. Link, as we said, is the same Link from the first game. This Zelda is not the same Zelda, because they have made a point of renaming every female princess in Hyrule Zelda.
Like, never forget.
I mean, basically, yes, that's exactly what they're going for there. Aside from those two, there's a few other named characters in this game. My favorite being Bagu, because I get to tell everybody that I know Bagu, especially the one guy, the river guy. And then there's more famously there is Error, who is not just a typo in that it was intentional that his name was actually translated as Error, which is kind of...
As a kid, I thought it was like some kind of glitch or something, or they didn't translate it properly.
I think everyone might have done that for a thing, yeah, because I thought that forever too. I mean, when you see that, it's always kind of become a joke, right? But
yeah, it's pretty meta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in the video that came out last week, someone mentioned that Bagu actually translates to Japanese for bug. So it sounds like that was intentional, that they had bug and error, or some of the two of the like. So I don't know if that's it's a coder joke or what else it might be going on there, but
just a little humor,
little
Easter egg.
It worked. Aside from that, you have a bunch of townspeople. None of them are really named. Some of them are called out. Like I think one's referred to as like Thirsty Woman. And then you've got the like old lady who refills your magic, and the woman in the red dress who will make you some tea, apparently, to replenish your health. So there's quite a few different people, and some people turn into bats. Did you guys run into that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, one woman in one town. That's all I experience.
Oh, because you just stopped talking to people who were wearing purple, right? Like that was just like, I don't want this.
Enough of that.
Yeah. Cut it out.
You mentioned the thirsty woman, and that's just something that makes me like chuckle every time. It's like you do that one quest where you have to bring water, and she's like, "Oh, you have water. Come in." And then it's like she's literally thirsty. It's like with the implications of you just enter this woman's house and suddenly come out with full health.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an interesting joke. I made a point toward the end of decide. Well, I guess it depended on the town. Some towns I would avoid going multiple screens in, right? Like some of them, the health lady was like 2 or 3 screens in, whereas the magic one may have been on that first one. So I would just go to the magic lady, have her replenish, do the life spell till I was full, and then go back in and not have to walk the town quite as much, which really wasn't that big of a deal. The town music was soothing. I kind of liked it, but just you find other ways to get around that, and everyone always goes like,
gets you through a lot in this game.
Yeah. So did anyone else have any thoughts on the on any of the other characters, or anyone else that you ran across, like in the overworld or in the towns?
I really don't remember anyone else besides the names listed here. So no one else really kind of stands out for that too. So
I mean, you kind of pointed out the main points of the general. There isn't a very large cast of named NPCs, but I guess something worth noting that I always think is interesting, because I played through this game in full after beating, games like A Link to the Past or Ocarina of Time, is just how they named all of the stages in those games after the towns in this game. So I always thought that was really neat.
Wait, there were...
Yeah, I never noticed that before.
I've heard about that before too. Yeah, I just forgot about it until now.
Well, there was the one town that was Saria, right? And that's Saria is in
Ocarina.
Ocarina.
They.
I didn't draw the lines on the other ones.
I would have to pull up the whole list, but I always thought that was a neat little tidbit. It's like canonically, the towns were named after them because Zelda 2 came after, Link's downfall and Ocarina, supposedly, going by the timeline. But, for when the games came out, the towns in Zelda 2 came first. So.
See, that's wild. That's wild.
Just a little fun fact.
That is a really good one. I like that. Let's shift gears into. We want to talk levels now, or maybe we can talk. Yeah, let's talk about the palaces. We've talked about the overworld. We've talked about people that we're running across, but the big meat of this game are these combat environments, including the palaces themselves. And so there were 6 in total. Each of them had an individual special item, which then helped with traversal. Now, Ryan, I think you had some hangups with the item structure in general. Do you want to kind of hit on that a little bit?
I mean, the items essentially in this game are only designed to get you to the next level, right? Like, the raft can get you across the water, and you only use it once. Most of the items are like that in this game. Like, you get boots to walk on the water, but you can't really walk on the water. You have to find the path that's on the water. So little stuff like that. You usually, in most Zelda games, and actually probably all Zelda games, you usually get an item, and that's what you usually use to beat the boss for that level. And then going forward, you can continue to use that item. This game doesn't have that. So that's one of my hangups.
Fair enough. So the fact that those really are just. They just cut a barrier, and that's about it, right? They're not. It's not akin to, you mentioned Zelda 1 items, or Link to the Past has that sort of mechanic where it's like, this thing helps you finish this level specifically. Tell me about your feelings on the palaces, though. Did you feel, Ryan, that the palaces were adequately did they provide adequate challenge? Did you like or not like them?
They all provided a challenge, but the thing about it, the thing I guess I don't like. Well, I don't know if it's like what's a gripe, if you will. It's I couldn't describe to you what each one does. Like by that I mean I can tell you probably the boss, but that's all I can generally remember from each level or every palace, because most of them they seem to just kind of blend in my memory. So I know that's not the best answer, but it's much easier when you can say, "Oh, this is the water temple," or "This is the fire temple." It's stuff like that. This game, I don't feel that in this one at all. They all kind of blend in, if you will.
The temples are more of a byproduct of where they are located, right? You had the one that was you got to from the graveyard, or you had the one that you got to by going through a maze, but the levels themselves were mazes. The palaces themselves were mazes in and of themselves, but I see
kind of similar in a way too. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of them are more tricky than others. I will again admit that I had somebody giving me turn-by-turn instructions, Ryan, on the Great Palace, so I wasn't going to turn it down. He's like, "No, go left, go right," and I was like, "Fine."
It's always fun when there's someone slight delay behind you. So when you see, go left,
like, no, he's going the wrong way.
Go back.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, I see where you're coming from. Now, granted, I think some of the biggest challenge in the game, and Michael, I'm going to throw to you on Death Mountain and the Valley of Death as well.
Yeah.
You want to kind of talk about what those do, I guess maybe differently from the Palace, that provides a completely different challenge entirely?
I don't know if it provides a completely different challenge. I mean, Death Mountain's it's a massive barrier so early in the game because it's so hard to get through. You haven't become accustomed to the combat yet. You're a little under-leveled unless you've built up, and it gets confusing going from place to place, the more difficult enemies. And I mean, with the palace, like if you get an item or you get so far, like I like to cheat in the palaces. I like to die in the palace after I get the special item. Then I'll go do the extra stuff and come back maybe with an extra heart or something like that. It's fun to die in the palaces because you get halfway, you might get an item, you get a couple keys, you can come back. When you're going through Death Mountain, if you die, you just start right from the beginning again until you get all the way to the hammer. It really is a nuclear deterrent for people trying to enjoy this game because it's just too hard too early. That's the best way I can explain it.
No, that is a great metaphor for exactly what that is. Yeah, kudos to you on that. Now, Ryan, I know you Valley of the Death proved to be a big challenge for you as well.
Yes, the Valley of Death.
How much you hate that too?
The Valley of Death, I thought, was probably the hardest part in the whole game.
Nah.
Oh yes,
cheat. Don't you know how to cheat?
Well, I eventually looked into how to cheat through it. I found I kind of looked through after struggling for, I would like to say, I don't know, close to an hour, try to get through that because I would run out of life or magic.
Yeah.
I found through some speedrunner tips that there's the way to cheat through it is you're gonna hit at least 3 spots along the way in the Valley of the Death. Once you find out where these spots are, you generally want to stop right in front of it and wait for the enemies to respawn. So as soon as they spawn, they're going to hit you right away. So as soon as they make their move for you, you move forward, and eventually you'll line up exactly the same time, and you'll just get the easier option. And one of the ways I was using the I want to say it's the spell. It will turn all the floating eyeballs into little jelly blobs, and you can just get your way right through it, and it makes the Valley of Death significantly easier. But trying to take that straight on, I was taking quite the beating trying to get through the regular path that you're gonna hit, because Yeah, I mean, there's no other way through it. There's no way, getting to the very end. But like I said, that cheat lets you bypass over that path. If you hit the spawn enemies, you can skip right over them. So
There's another way too. I did it a little bit differently. What I used to do was I actually found that part that's supposed to be easy extremely hard for some reason. And I didn't use the spell. I was actually trying to take out the blue flying eyeballs, and I'd always end up falling in the lava. But what I did was I'd actually just go into the traps. I'd put on my fairy spell and go from one side of the screen to the other and just be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
I used the fairy spell to get past some of the bridges, like with the skeleton fish, because I was just like, I'm not going to lose a life here. Like I'd rather have to grind out the replenishment of my magic than have to risk losing multiple lives getting knocked back here.
Same here. And
Yeah.
I think the funny thing too about the fairy spell, it's like in this Zelda game particularly, compared to other Zelda games where they'll be like, so you have to solve this puzzle in order to get the key to unlock the way. Or in this one, it's like, you know what? If you don't want to get the key, just use the fairy spell. It's okay. We got you.
There was one. It was getting the raft. I don't know if you have to. Maybe you have to in that moment. But I was like, I got there. There was a blue iron knuckle throwing swords, and I was just like, I was like, I'm gonna just turn into a fairy. I'm gonna go grab that thing, and like you said, it's fun to die in the palaces. I just ran for it as a fairy. I flew for it, but flew in, grabbed it, and I think I died right after that. And I was like, don't care, got it.
Progress.
Yes. And then it made me not have to bother with half of the palace after that point. So yes, I totally see your point, and I actually took advantage of it there as well. Now, one of the differences here, though, getting to the Great Palace, which is the last one, one of the things that changes about this is that if you die here, you respawn here. Now, Ryan, you had done a little bit of research here, or you have a suspicion as to why this functions differently. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Absolutely. So yeah, the Great Palace. Originally, this game, when it launched in Japan, it was on the Famicom Disk System. So the majority, from my research here, the majority of the game is on the one side of the game until you get to the Great Palace. Then you have to flip the disc over and you play the Great Palace. This is why when you die out of all palaces at the Great Palace, you start back there, because the disc system, you couldn't start back over at the very beginning. All that's on that one side, and that's why from that point forward, it's only the Great Palace, and that's it.
Oh,
Great
that's
Palace
so
and
funny.
Yeah,
Never thought about it.
It's kind of weird, but it makes perfect sense. That's the only reason why you'll start right at the Great Palace, and I think it's pretty cool.
And that aspect, sorry.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, like, you kind of feel like once you get there, you're rewarded. Like, you already had to restart so many times because you died. So you know what? For this temple, we'll let you start at the beginning of the palace, so you don't have to go through the world map again. So you feel like maybe it's because they're rewarding you, but nope, it's actually just because they couldn't do it.
Yep. Yep, it's one of those things you think about it, and then it really is just a limitation. So it's kind of funny, but yeah.
Well, I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So glad.
For sure.
Default.
Well, yeah, and it's wild that wasn't something that just happened naturally throughout, right? Like I think perception of this game would be entirely different if you didn't have to make that trek every single time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm not sure why. There's no good reason for why they didn't. I don't think.
I'm going to probably say maybe a little bit of rush development just to get it out, because what in that video, that SNES Drunk video, I think they said it launched 6 months after the first one in Japan. So I kind of see that point, because I think not having to make that trip every single time if you die to get back to that temple, it'd be so much easier if you just started over right at the beginning of the temple. You know, get another shot at it, as opposed to like, oh, I hope I don't take any damage because it takes. It's gonna really, you know, I need to come into this as much life as possible, you know, or I don't want to use my magic. It'd be great just to start right there, as opposed to having to do that long journey back to whatever palace I was going to.
I know you brought up earlier getting like knocked into the lava, and that was a very controller throwing thing for me. Like, just I'm gonna take a break for a week. I'll be back for like the 20th time. Just get bumped right into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It suffered the Castlevania knockback syndrome, or I mean, they viewed it as a, hey, we're gonna give you guys a little bit of help by not letting you just get crushed by this enemy 3 times in a row, right? But yeah, that was. There were moments. Let's just say that I feel like I kept my cool with some of it, but it was just like, are you serious?
Yep. Always with the lava.
The other big challenges were the bosses themselves. So I would like to at least talk about maybe our favorite bosses, or maybe individual ones that you enjoyed or didn't enjoy. We could just go straight down the list if we want. There really aren't that many. But Palace 1, you come across, his formal name is Horsehead. Let me see here.
For me, I feel like that was like one of the more memorable ones because you don't really start out with a lot. And I don't know, I feel like I died a decent amount to him. Even though it was the first boss, it's like they throw you in, you're like, oh, it's the first boss. How bad could it be? And then the boss is just like, sit down.
Sorry, I'm being distracted by these guys when I see people adding me in the chat here. What is going on?
What is happening?
No, they add it.
I hate being pinged and stuff. Don't at me.
Sean is saying the disc had to be flipped for the final temple, so they couldn't kick you back to the first temple because it wasn't on the same side.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said, right?
Yeah, is that what I said?
Yeah, that's what you said.
Whatever. We'll just edit all this shit out.
Okay. Sorry.
Back to the bosses, right?
Yes, back to the bosses. The next one up, and I don't have a name for this guy, so in my notes we just typed guy. This was like he's like a blue knight, but when you hit him, his head fell off.
Yeah.
Oh, the headless, like yeah.
Let me think of. I'm trying to think if there's a better way we could hit this. Because let me ask this. We'll do favorites and then least favorites, or one or the other, or we can hit them both. Let's do least favorites first.
Good.
Let's do least favorites first. And I'll start with Ryan so that we can only build up more positively here. Ryan, who was your least favorite boss?
Thunderbird.
Yes.
Yeah.
The guy,
So okay, so it sounds like we may have some mutual
agreement here.
some mutual hatred for Thunderbird here. Okay.
So real quick, I guess tip, and I couldn't execute it because I don't save state and I didn't want to practice doing it. I just wanted to beat it and get over with. You can actually skip Thunderbird and go straight to Shadow Link, but
why would you?
It's a spot right after, you have to get to, there's that bridge that you have to go walk across that disintegrates and eventually fall in the middle. There's a hole and takes you straight down. Well, if you keep walking past it and you use the jump spell and you jump backwards, you keep going forward and you use the jump spell and flip, hit going from left to right. You want to quickly try jumping up and to left, and it'll launch you on the screen above Thunderbird. And you just walk across it and it drops you right down into the Shadow Link boss. So if you're good at it, I tried several times. And eventually it just got sick and tired of trying to figure it out, beat Thunderbird legitly as opposed to trying to skip them. So
yeah, why would you deprive yourself of that experience?
Yeah. That boss sucks. It's not fun, and there's no way to beat it without the Thunder Spell, right? And
yeah, you have to make him invulnerable, yeah.
And the Thunder Spell takes up so much magic too. So it's like you have to be perfect. You have to dodge the fireballs that he shoots at you, which I found you can just do kind of like you kind of always just kind of want to go away from them and then come backwards. Kind of like an 8 pattern, if you will, and try to strike him in the head. But,
Did either of you guys use reflect on him?
no.
Does it work on him? I
Yeah,
remember having enough. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm trying to calculate because it's been so many years, but I remember you had enough magic to use the thunder spell. You could use the shield to give yourself extra defense, and then I think you had enough left for maybe 1 heal or 2. I don't remember how much mana the reflect used.
So
because at max you have I think 128, and Thunder takes half of that right away.
Brutal.
yeah. So what I used was shield, jump, reflect, and then when he came out, I used thunder, which took me down pretty much, almost wiped out. I had like 3/4 of a block left or something like that. But for some reason, the reflect spell, you don't seem to get hit as much. The only time I would really get hit was when I was jumping, trying to hit him directly in the face. That's what I had the most challenge, was actually making contact with his face. But just then, I beat him second try. With the reflect spell, like nothing was hitting me.
That's
Oh,
wild.
that's impressive. Huh.
And you just did that, right? Like
Yeah.
just that's
Oh
crazy.
yeah, like the minutes before I jumped on this, and I would have been done sooner, except I spent 10 minutes going in the wrong direction in the palace, and then I was like, I gotta basically die and start over again. There was no point in even trying to get back to where I was.
Yeah, that palace is a little bit of a maze, and that's what I was trying to give Musty directions through Twitch chat, which you're on a 30-second delay. So, but Musty
I looking back, I probably should have just let myself get lost in the maze a little bit, but whatever, it's fine. The thing about Thunderbird, I think the thing about Thunderbird that is most notable to me is the design, because it is so out of place for everything else that's in this game. Everything else is, for the most part, humanoid, and except for the dragon, which is standard for Zelda games. You've always had at least one boss dragon, if not multiple, and so like seeing this thing reminded me more of the first phase of the Ninja Gaiden final boss. And it had a very similar like attack too, right? That's sort of like it's almost like the
flower petals of doom.
Exactly, like there's like V-shaped. It almost looks like, I'm gonna go Lord of the Rings reference here, the Even Star pendant that Arwen wears.
Oh yeah.
Yep, very kind of similar.
Nerd.
I'll take it. That's good. Okay, so we've got Ryan and Aaron's least favorite was Thunderbird. Michael, did you have a least favorite boss?
So I have a least favorite, which is actually my least favorite. I found Thunderbird to be the hardest, but my least favorite was I think it's like a magician boss, where basically all you do is you put on the reflect spell and like crouch in the corner and you kill him in like 4 seconds. Like he doesn't even hit you. Like to me, like other than using the trick to beat Dark Link, it was just stupid. There was no point to it.
It's not rewarding.
No, not at all.
I have to agree with you. I actually sat in the middle though. I didn't sit in the corner. I probably could have saved myself some effort.
Oh yeah.
But I was in the middle and I was just going, just back and forth, like, because some of them, if he was too far away, it wouldn't register the hit.
Yeah.
And so I found being in the middle at least increased the odds that I was going to catch him. But yeah, I totally get your point there. It was just very, very unfulfilling.
It's cheap,
boss.
Yeah.
I mean, cheap, like the way that people have now solved Shadow Link.
Yeah.
That one gets me. That also feels super lame.
Yeah. It's, and I know that there are some people who've done it the right way, and kudos to them, but like,
do you want to hear my story about the Great Palace?
Please.
I do. Tell us about it.
So when it came to that one for Thunderbird, I think I spent a straight I think it was 6 hours just on Thunderbird, just straight dying, going back because I was really bad at dodging the stupid flower petals of doom. So that was 6 hours, and by the end, I wasn't like angry, I wasn't crying, but there was a single tear rolling down my cheek. I was just like so just defeated. And then I get to Shadow Link. I didn't look anything up, so I had no idea about the push him into a corner pro strats. And maybe it's because I remember the fight from Ocarina of Time, where it's like the similar kind of mirroring type combat, and I beat it in one go, and I was like, huh, that wasn't so bad. I went to look it up. That was pretty easy, right, guys? And the internet's like, yeah, it's easy. Just use this trick. I was like, wait, what?
So you beat him straight up on your first try without cheesing it.
First shot. I had half health.
Slow clap for you on that one. That's awesome.
That's supposed to be, I think, the most difficult boss fight in the whole game. I think it's supposed to be.
Well, it just seems like there's no pattern to it, right? Like, I mean, maybe there is if you really take the time to fight him over and over and over again, that you'll finally find it. But it sounds like you managed to nail it on the first attempt, which is awesome. It was
the Thunderbird adrenaline, because I feel like I paid my dues on that boss. That was 6 to 8 hours of just cruelty and torture.
I didn't want to dare go against Shadow Link legit, because I had like the slimmest little bit of health left, and I was just like, nope, going in this corner, and I'm gonna finally beat this game, and because I didn't want to have to do Thunderbird again. That was an absolute pain. So
do you have to do Thunderbird again if you don't beat Dark Link?
Yep.
Oh,
I looked it up.
Wow.
I looked at Madness up. So I was like, well, you know what? I feel like by the end of that Thunderbird track, I feel like I got pretty good at it. So maybe even if I had died to Shadow Link, it wouldn't have been too insufferable.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would start the whole temple over though, in any case, right?
If
you end up losing all your lives.
It's just. At least you start being in a temple.
like just the thought.
The thing that got me through it was the music. That is my favorite song in the entire game. In almost like every Zelda game, I love it so much.
Let's talk about the music real quick.
So I'll ask her a quick question. So are you talking about the temple music or the Great Temple music?
The Great Palace. The Great
Palace.
Yes. I love that theme so much. And I feel like if you haven't, not a lot of people cover that one. So if you're playing through the game for the first time, it's like people usually stop halfway through, they give up on the game. But if you keep going, you get to the end, you're like, wow, it's a bump. This is a good one. And I don't know, it really grew on me. But I think that's the only way I was able to get through Thunderbird after that grind is the fact that the song was so good.
See, I gravitate, and maybe this is just about what a lot of people gravitate toward, is that the general temple, like the first 6 temples or palaces music. That one I love that one. That one is on the
Musty playlist.
It's on the playlist, but I was gonna say it's on the Zelda Smash Brothers. Like it's the default music for that one map.
The temple map, yeah.
The temple map.
Exactly.
And so it's just that one sticks with me. I mean, to me the music across the board is awesome. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the same way there, Musty. Like for me, and there's so many similarities for some reason between this and Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. So I consider that palace music to be like this game's bloody tears.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Like to me, it's just like this was like one of the few that wasn't composed by Koji Kondo. This was Akito Nakatsuka, and like you just kind of like, wait, so it wasn't even Koji Kondo. This I don't even know like what else he had composed. Like, I didn't know him by name until I really got into the Zelda 2 soundtrack, It was just wild. So they brought on someone completely different for this one. And I don't know, I think it's a masterpiece for being, and especially since it was such an old game,
One thing I'll say about this game is actually I really do enjoy the music. So a compliment for this game is the music is fantastic. If I want to say a track, because mentioning tracks here. I really do like the town music. I know Musty, you mentioned it earlier, but I mean, listening to the soundtrack, the town music, I really just like it. It's relaxing. It's, I don't know, it's catchy. And then in the opening theme, I think is fantastic too. I love the opening theme, just letting it play out all the way through before even starting it. It's very catchy. The
opening screen with the sword in the rock there, and the shooting star, and all kinds of stuff.
If we're gonna talk audio here for a little bit, I just kind of want to ask if anyone else kind of noticed like some of the Punch Out like sound bites, the assets being used from Mike Tyson's Punch Out, or regular Punch Out, if you will. If you die, you hear the laugh.
Soda popping its laugh, yeah.
That I kind of also noticed like the sound going into battle. It definitely sounds like the Super Punch in my opinion, or the Star Punch. I gotta believe there's more too. Like they just use the same assets over again, but
and like the Ganon laugh at the end.
Yeah,
like a tweaked version of the Punch Out. I don't even remember who it is.
Soda Popinski.
Oh yeah, that guy.
But no, I imagine these a couple things over again. I mean, it's in the house, might as well just if they fit, it fits. But I thought that was kind of cool. It's one thing I was kind of noticing while playing. I'm like, hey, this sounds awfully familiar, and it's more than just one game, or more than just one asset from that game.
True that. You want another fun fact?
Shoot
it's
me.
the same composer in both games.
What?
Yeah, so it gets deeper than just the sound font.
Wait, for Punch Out and for this?
Yes.
Aha!
It's like,
that is interesting.
So remember, it's just like one of the few things that I've played that he's also composed for. It's just, the more you know.
That is really interesting. Although there's not a whole, there's like what, 3 tracks in Punch Out as well, right?
Yeah, it's not
three or 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a ton, but
what's there is good though.
Yeah,
that's what you like to see is quality versus quantity.
We'll take the one hit wonder when it can be this level of good
and memorable. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's like Zelda 2. I think that's when I was saying like it's what got me through the game. It's so everyone's naming all of their strategies for grinding and stuff, but I mostly use the overworld enemies where you just run into them and start combat because I really love the battle music in Zelda 2. So if I got to hear it every time I'm grinding out XP, I'm here for it.
Do.
Iconic.
Yeah, so good. So I pulled this away from bosses there for a second. We sort of talked about we had 2 of us who were Thunderbird for a negative and 2 of us were Wizard for a negative. Is there a consensus favorite that you guys have, or Aaron? Let's start with you. Did you have a favorite boss of the ones that were here?
I'm a huge fan of just in games in general, the old like classic one-on-one duel. So I'm a huge fan of the Shadow Link fight. It's like to the point where I think it was the year I beat it, I went and did like a gender bent cosplay even because I don't know, I love that style of combat, just like the you can't beat the game until you defeat yourself kind of edginess. Just like how it's like the same way in Ocarina of Time where you have to figure out where it's mirrored and stuff to be able to defeat it. And I just always think that's really fun and clever, even if it can be frustrating at times. So a lot of the bosses were kind of forgettable to me. The first one I remember because it was a pain, like I said. I don't even want to talk about Thunderbird anymore. I'm trying to.
That's fine. No, we didn't. We do not have to talk about Thunderbird anymore. But so Shadow Link would be your favorite for not only what it signifies in the game, but also just the challenge of the fight.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
Cool. That's really cool. Mike, let's get your favorite boss, if you have one.
You know what? I really don't know if I have a favorite. Like, I thought they were all pretty good. I thought they were all pretty interesting, except for I had a lot of trouble with Thunderbird. I also had a lot of trouble with the knight on the mounted horse for some reason, like the mounted horse part was super easy. I mean, you just did the downward thrust. But for some reason, he's just a regular enemy afterwards. But the blue guy that throws the knives, I had a lot of problem with him afterwards. And I was not happy. I think it's in the 6th temple where you actually randomly come across 2 more of those that are just in the temple.
Wasn't there one that like takes off his head and starts throwing that at you or something along those lines?
That was the 2nd temple boss. That was Helmet Head, I think is now.
Yeah, I remember that being a huge pain as well. Like, it's all coming back to me.
Because if you take too long, then all of a sudden you've got multiple heads floating around. I think, if I remember right.
Or like, no, I think like the lower you got his health, the more heads he'd spawn. I think that's what it was. It's been a hot minute, but it was something like that.
So you knock his helmet off, you knock the 2 helmets off, and then you can attack his head. But the 2 helmets then stay up in the top of the screen, and they'll randomly attack you. That's what happens.
Yeah, that's what it is. It sucks.
Don't like. I'm gonna say my favorite was like I liked the dragon fight.
We're here for dragons. Enter Game of Thrones spoilers.
It wasn't overly. I mean, I didn't feel like it was overly difficult. And then somebody told me, "Oh, just crouch and stab as he's going up and down instead of trying to jump and hit him." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I was having fun jumping and getting him right, at the right spot." Like, but that was a cool. I feel like that battle had something different going for it than everything else up to that point. Everything else was basically evade and attack, and this one was
not another humanoid too, like you said earlier.
Yes,
some variety.
Exactly.
It was also really cool looking too. Like if you remember most of the ads and stuff for Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, that fight always seemed to end up in those ads for some reason.
We got dragons.
That's right.
Dragons. Kids love dragons.
Kids love the dragons. Ryan, how about you? Is there a boss that you love?
I'll take probably the easy answer, and I'll say Shadow Link or the Wizard because I wanted a nice, cheap, easy ending. Basically,
just get it over with.
For how frustrated I was with the majority of the game, gameplay wise, I kind of like the nice, easy boss fights where I'll just crouch or, and stab or just reflect. Dragon was alright. I think it was kind of like a little bit of stress coming from it because if you get hit, you get knocked back, and you're between 2 pillars. You kind of jump between if you would see the dragon. I didn't try to jump and stab him because I couldn't hit it. I would always have to wait for him to either rise and try to get him or come back down and try to get him. So I mean, out of I guess real boss fights, I would say maybe Dragon, but I enjoyed honestly just crouching down and stabbing Shadow Link and enjoying the victory screen. So maybe Shadow Link was probably my favorite.
You've earned it.
Yeah.
What's really interesting, I kind of got a little bit of help from the Zelda dungeon walkthrough, and I think it was maybe Castle 5, the guy that actually has the mace. Mm-hmm. They went nuts in the guide saying this is one of the best fights in all of video gaming, but none of us mentioned him at all, and they said it's a real challenge. But I blew right through him. Like I didn't even have to try him twice. Like I basically went in, stabbed him 5-6 times, and that was it. Game over. Did anybody else have any challenge with him?
I had a lot of challenge with him.
Really?
Oh yeah,
I did too. Go ahead, Ryan. Though
he's got a very large hitbox. So basically, if you get hit, I want to say 2 or 3 times you're done, unless you have health. But I think eventually I got to the part where I came into his battle with full health, and I had enough magic to refill myself like twice, and that's how I got by him. But yeah, I think I might even be able to got behind him too and get him a couple times. But
the thing I found about getting behind him, and this is what I think frustrated me about that fight the most, is that he would be swinging his mace facing, let's just say, left on the screen. And you jump over him and get to the right just as he's about to throw the mace out, and he'll throw it in the direction that you are. Like it's like his momentum didn't give himself the opening that should be happening from that swing because he's swinging it to throw it to the left, and instead he just, the moment you get onto his right, it's like boop, and he hits you with it there. And I found that really annoying. But then I think I realized, and I made a point of slowing down. Like, this was the first boss that like really made me slow down and just pick my spots. And then once that happened, then the fight actually became quite easy. So I think to your comment, Michael, yes, I think in the sort of haste to blow through the boss, it becomes much more difficult. But if you pace yourself, if you find your opportunities, and all you have to do is just time that jump to get over the mace, because having jump on gives you, I think, enough air time to get clear of it, especially if you're far enough away that you're not getting it immediately. But yeah, that the strategy of trying to jump over him, which seemed like it would work, especially as he was getting closer to the one end of the screen, you almost had to do it. But I found it was like,
had sucked.
yeah, oh, absolutely, because yeah, he would get like 2/3 of the way across the screen, and then you'd be toast if you didn't get clear of him. And yeah, I see what you're saying though. They consider that one of the great fights in video games. That's wild.
Yeah, if you get a chance, go through the walkthrough through Zelda Dungeon, and like they say, this is truly the fight that makes this game to stand out. And I'm like, I guess I had it overhyped. I just basically walked up to him, stab, 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 life spell, stab, 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 stab. It was over.
Wow. Okay. That is
Truly great.
Speedrun win.
That's truly interesting. That's good. Before we kind of, I guess we're close to kind of tying everything together here, I wanted to open up to any other, I guess, favorite moments throughout the games, whether it's individual things that happened or missions, or this game really didn't set up a whole lot of those side quests, but there were a few where it was like, where something, you got the reward at the end. Most of the time it was like another heart container or a magic container or a spell or something, but really you kind of need all the spells. Did Aaron, were there any moments in this game that stuck out to you that were like, that was something cool that I thought was, maybe thought was funny or anything along those lines?
I wouldn't say it's cool because it was literally the opposite, but yeah, I guess talking earlier about being bumped into the lava, I honestly, the first time I just threw everything. I was so angry, but the second time it just kind of got more funny the more it happened. It's like you kind of just get numb to it and try to find the humor in it, just getting like booped in. It's like you think you'd learn the first 20,000 times, but yeah. So I mean, I guess something else to mention has nothing to do with the gameplay, because I think we've covered pretty much all of my memorable bits. I guess I can bring up my earliest memory of playing this game, because I had an NES growing up. See, me and my brother would play a lot of the games like Zelda 2 or Crystalis with my dad. So I guess my earliest gaming memory of all time, I think I was 3 or 4, and I was playing Zelda 2, and by playing I mean just like running into the towns and talking to people, because probably tried to kill some stuff and died instantly. I don't know how to play this. I still don't know how to play it, but I passed out while playing the game, just holding the controller, and I still remember like my dad being like, "Okay, time to go to bed." And I was trying to like bring the whole controller and system with me, and he's like prying it while I'm like half asleep. Like, no, I have to finish the game. That was like my earliest gaming memory.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome, Michael. Favorite moments, maybe aside from anything that we've noted or things that you thought were notable.
No, none of the side missions or anything like that. For me, the big notable moments going through it this time, because the very quick pace I gave myself for finishing this, because like our other guest, I've already finished this, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get through to it this month. And I told you guys Thursday night, I was like, I think I got to play it again. And I just went through this as quick as possible. Every spare minute I had, I put into this. So being able to get through it so quickly this time with how much trouble I had the first time, that was a huge moment for me. Like being able to finish this literally minutes before I came on the podcast. So that was pretty cool. And
Awesome.
if I had to talk about any moment that's really exciting, the two biggest moments for me when playing this game every time is getting through Death Mountain the first time and getting the hammer, the sense of relief you feel when that's over, and also when you finally get the downward thrust, because it completely changes the way the game's played. Like you can skip things then, skip enemies. That's also one of the big moments in the game, I guess you would call it. The downward thrust changes the way everything's played.
Yeah,
And
for
it's
sure.
really fun too.
Oh,
A lot
yeah.
of games took from that mechanic. Like it makes me think of things like Shovel Knight, the whole jumping onto people's heads with whatever you're using, and it was so smooth in Zelda 2 as well. So I feel like that was a great way to start that mechanic out.
Yeah, DuckTales, the pogo stick mechanic.
Oh
Maybe,
yeah.
yeah.
So the funny thing is, both of those are former club games of the month: Shovel Knight and DuckTales. So we must really like our pogo jumps. That must be it. Yeah, I think for me, one of the favorite moments I have, I always found it the sheer joy in Link's face as he holds an item over his head. Just how, because like he did that in the first one, but Link was this differently shaped individual. Link was a little more stout, and like just the
kind of got a trippy face when he does in the first game too.
Yeah, right. His face just kind of goes and like
yeah.
Yeah, it's a little odd, but this like he's just like and like holding up. He's like, I got a key. No wait, he doesn't hold the key. I have the skeleton key. Like, yeah, I'm happy. I think the best one though is the small boy.
Yeah.
See, so in the maze, you find the boy who's been lost, and he holds him over his head like this
with a doofy like kid smile of his own.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's great. It's great. I like that moment. Just it makes me chuckle, and I love it. And yeah,
a little comedic relief.
Oh yeah, it's great. I think it's wonderful. Ryan, let me leave you to the last of this category, which is your, I guess, favorite moments in a game that maybe you had to struggle to find one. Did you find one? Let me ask you that.
Beating the game. That was my favorite moment. That was a highlight. It was, like I said, it was
over. Is that what you're saying?
But no, it's always kind of irked me that I've never beaten this game, and I've beaten every other console Zelda. I can't say that for the the portable games yet, because I was never much of a portable gamer growing up. But no, this was always kind of like a thorn in my side that you never beat this game. This is a game that you've gotten so close, and you didn't do it. So it was kind of that last thing I needed to do just to cross it off, and it was such a sigh of relief to beat this game, because as a Zelda fan now, I can say I've beaten them all. At least the console versions. But it honestly was my favorite moment of the game. Not to throw shade on it, but it was you could breathe again. So the struggles you've gone through, and it's over. So
very good. Okay, so I want to ask a couple questions of the panel to kind of wrap up our thoughts on this, and then we'll get into some community impressions after that. First question I'm going to throw out there to everyone, and whoever feels like they have an answer, go ahead and jump at this. But why does this game get a bad rap?
Because it's not the first game.
Because it's not the first game. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if this game had anything else in the title, had any other kind of name, I think people would look back and say, this was a really special game. But it's the fact that it was Zelda, but not Zelda. I think that's like a stigma that surrounds the game and really turns people off. The game's incredible. It's just people go into it with a preconceived notion of what they're expecting to play, and it's not that.
There's definitely something to that. It's like, the first one is so much more simplistic. I mean, it's tough as well, but it was way more simplified. This one, they tried to do so much with it at once. There's just a lot happening. So yeah, I feel like if people were expecting the same kind of, linear adventure, this one, you have to figure so much out on your own by like given some pretty vague hints, and there's just a lot of stuff going on.
I think it gets a bad rap because it has bad gameplay. So
This is the hill Ryan's going to die on here. So,
Yeah.
I guess. So let me ask this question to those who enjoy the game. So Ryan, you can sit out on this one. Should we get another Zelda game in this style? And if the answer is no, that's totally fine. Like, is there a place where a Zelda 2 type of game fits into the current kind of ecosystem of Zelda games? Let me ask that.
What? I'll answer that with another question. What makes you think we already haven't?
Fair enough.
Because if you look at the 3D games share more similarities with Zelda 2 than they do with the original Legend of Zelda, in my opinion. The way that the combat works.
You're totally right.
That's deep.
I like that. And that's and it's wild because they have so one of the reasons we Ryan and I, when we were looking at scheduling out our games for this season, we were looking back to like trends of previous years, and it seemed like we had hit a Zelda game with some frequency. And I don't know if it was every year, but I think at least 3 of the 5 seasons there was a Zelda game. Ryan, am I right?
Yep.
Yeah, and so we were like, you know what? We wanted to say, let's have a Zelda game, like let's have a Zelda month, and let's just say like April's gonna be Zelda month, right? And so initially we were looking at it, we're like, well, what are we gonna do? And I know, Ryan, you have your favorite, which is Ocarina. Yes, and then we're like, hold on, because I know a lot of our community enjoys playing games in release order. And playing them, to say that they've played through all of them in order, or at least they won't play a game later in the series until they played one of the prior ones. And so I think we picked this one out of trying to realize that it was probably one that a lot of people had skipped. But it's interesting that how much of a, like you said, how similar those 3D ones are here, and that really it's the Zelda 1 and the Link to the Past ones that have sort of gravitated more to your like portable versions, and not the 3D ones, which is wild. I don't know where I was going to there, but
Absolutely wild.
Well, and also don't kid yourself. We've had spiritual successors in other games that have taken elements from this. I mean, you look at some of the, even I'm playing right now Monster Boy and the Wonder Boy, the Dragon's Trap. And I mean, there's elements of really Zelda 2 in that game. I'm not 100% sure what came first between the Wonder Boy action adventure and Zelda 2. I don't know my dates on that, but I do think that this game spawns some other spiritual successors. Like elements have been taken from it.
Mm-hmm. I could definitely see that. And I entirely agree with you. Is there anything that this game could use adjustment on that would make it better? And I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to throw it to you guys first.
For me, I guess I feel like when they give you hints to where you're supposed to go next or what you're supposed to be getting or what have you, I understand that if it's left vague, then you have to get out there and explore. But some of the stuff in there is just way too overly vague, where it's kind of like, just I kind of compare it in my head to like if someone had given you a hint for like a geocache to compare it to like real life situations, and they're like, yeah, so I found these coordinates by a grocery store down the street where someone for the first time said, hey, nice smile, just something super vague like that. You're like, okay, like where do I go if I don't have a guide? So I feel like that is something that could have been improved on for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe the lack of communication from most of the townspeople is like a single sentence, which really is only like 5 or 6 words, like worth of description there. Yeah, I think I would agree with you that a little bit more. I don't want to say hand holding, but just better breadcrumbs to get
Maybe
to.
more of like a riddle than like a mystery.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. Ryan, anything you would change?
I would have liked being stronger in this game by like being at one of my max strength and health and with magic. I would rather have me feel like I'm stronger. Even maxed out in the game, I feel like I'm still weak. It won't take much to take me out. Maybe like having like in other Zelda games, you get the Master Sword, and eventually, that's kind of like your strongest sword. Like maybe improved weapons would have been where I don't feel like I'm getting destroyed when I'm at max level. Something like that, and spawning at the beginning of a palace, I think would have been
Sure.
Would have been much more. I think I would enjoy the game more with those two factors into play.
Okay. Michael, anything you would tinker with the game?
I really like that idea of adding like a Master Sword to this, but I'm going to go in a different direction. We talked about this, if they ever remastered this, like you talked about making another game, but say, for example, they did a remaster of this, something like a Monster Boy, Nintendo put that together. And I don't mean to baby mode this, but I'd like to see some other elements that are familiar with The Legend of Zelda built in. Like if we had maps for the palaces and, compasses to show us where the special items were and stuff like that, I think it would make the game a lot more enjoyable for people that aren't really necessarily there for the challenge. Because let's be honest, most of the Zelda games are relatively easy. This is really one of the harder ones, some of the more challenging ones. So some of those elements would maybe make this game, I don't know what the word is, more accessible for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. That kind of makes me think of how they changed the one annoying thing people had with Ocarina of Time, the water temple, how they updated it in the 3DS remake where they have it so what do you call it? Like the highlights where the piping of the water goes to change the water levels, you can actually see it clearly in the DS version. And that makes, little changes like that, like what you're getting at, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, like it would be easy for us to just say, oh, just make the sword twice as long once you're max power, right? So that you have better range or something. That would certainly change the Thunderbird fight quite a bit.
Big time.
But yeah. But no, that's good. I like that. So let me ask one last question of each of you, and to just kind of let you give your kind of your final thoughts on Zelda 2. And I'm going to just ask, would you suggest it to friends? And then let us know what your kind of final thoughts are on the game. Michael, I'm going to start with you on that.
I already have suggested it to friends. I've suggested it to everybody. I did a video that you shared on Twitter, I do believe, a while back, where I told you it was one of my favorite games on the NES, and I think everybody should play it.
Excellent. Aaron, would you suggest this to friends? And do you have any other final thoughts on the game before we wrap things up here?
What if I don't have friends? No, I kid. So for me personally, it would really depend on the person. So I know a lot of people who rage super hard when stuff gets tough in games. I would definitely not recommend this game to them. But if it's someone who's into games that are, more along the lines of, as I mentioned, like Ninja Gaiden, but want something more of a Final Fantasy type RPG adventure aspect, so like a little combination of both, I would totally recommend it to someone like that, especially if they're looking for, a long sit down challenge type of game. So that's the kind of person I'd recommend it to. I don't recommend it to everyone personally.
That's totally fair. Ryan?
What up? So I wouldn't recommend this game to anybody. Period. But I'm glad to say I beat this game. I will also say this is not the worst Zelda game in the series after beating it. There's one that's worse. Because
I'm getting my tea out for this.
How much of our audience do you want to alienate there,
Ryan?
I'm
happy to. What's it called? I think Skyward Sword is a worse game than this one. And it mostly comes down to motion controls and frustration and going back to the same areas over and over again. But that's for another show. I'm glad I beat this game. It's not the worst game I've ever played. It really is just, out of all Zelda games, I'm going to say it's just not at my top. There's other Zelda games that are more like comfort food for me, and this is out of my element. And if I'm gonna say it sucks, I only want to say it sucks in my opinion when it comes to other Zelda games. I don't mean to. I know this game's got a lot of fans. I questioned some people liking this game if it was, let's say, a Sega release. I don't know if it would have the fan base that it does, but this is just my opinion on the game. I think it's kind of a mess at times, but like I said, it's not the worst of all Zelda games on there. But you know, I'm glad to say I've beaten this game. Legit beat this game. So
we almost made it through the whole show before you brought that up.
But yeah, I'm glad to say I played it. I'm glad it was a Cartridge Club game. I'm glad people played along, and yeah, it's a fine game. It's not a bad NES game, but a way of saying it's maybe, in my eyes, a bad Zelda game. So,
which, I mean, a bad Zelda game still has the potential of being somewhat good. I like how you were walking back to like, I absolutely despise it, right? Like, just kind of just bring it back.
Someone's got to be the heel here, right? Someone's got.
I suppose. I mean, you could play the CDI games, and then we can have another talk about the quality of this game over those.
I'll just pull out a Panasonic CDI or something.
That's right.
Wait, did you just bring up peak Zelda side scroller? Because that is at the top of my list. Masterpiece.
That's right. That's fantastic. It's terrifying. Okay, so like, I really enjoyed my time with this game. I would recommend it to people who enjoy Zelda games. I would recommend it to people who maybe want a little bit more of a challenge out of their Zelda games. But I don't know how quickly I will come back to this one. I don't make a habit of like going back to replay games. Like, I don't have those like, this is a game I play every year. Like, there's some people who are like, I play Super Metroid once a year. Like, there are those people. There are some people like, I play Super Metroid 8 times a day. And this one's great. It's one that I can, be proud that I have seen all the way through, but and maybe I can go back some other time and try different approaches to actually completing the game. Maybe I'll try the Shadow Link fight for real instead of doing it the way I did this time. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm glad we picked it, and I hope that others had the opportunity to play it as well. Speaking of others in the community, we do make a point of asking our community to give their own impressions of the games that we select for the Games of the Month. So I'm going to hand things over to Ryan to go over some of the community impressions that we had. So Ryan, I'll hand things off to you.
Sure. Okay, so first off, we have Buried on Mars, and he wrote, this game is Mars approved. So Mars apparently likes this game. We have Duke from Retro Nonsense, and he says, I've always loved this game. This music is fantastic. The side-scrolling action and platforming are fun and challenging, and the leveling system is well balanced. However, the overworld has a lot of slowdowns for some reasons, and I always thought it was ugly. Overall, a great game. And I kind of agree with him. The music is great in this game, and the one thing I guess I'll bring it back up to gameplay real quick is I think I can completely see the slowdown part, because I always found when you're going to area, you have to keep hitting into these spawn enemies. Now I know there's some little loophole ways around where you can keep pressing start and you can kind of see the pattern they're coming. But all in all, if you're just playing this game through, I can see the slowdown part coming out of it. So we also have Cartridge Bros Player 1, Sean. He wrote, this game is a lot more fun and accessible due to baby mode on the Switch. Once you have level,
he didn't write baby mode. He wrote SP mode.
He wrote baby mode.
He did not write. Did he really?
No, he wrote SP mode.
Okay, thanks.
Once you have level 8s across the board, you can focus on adventuring, exploring, and just having fun. I can't help but think it's been better received. It would have been better received without the leveling or originally. And let me just stick out another one here. because this one was DM'd to me by Cartridge Bros P2. So let me just dig out here and pause for edit. Because what he wrote was not readable originally on Twitter. So let me just dig this back up.
Like you couldn't read it? Or he didn't want it read?
No, he wrote the ones I absolutely hate that I won't ever read for 3-word reviews or whatever. So he wrote, Zelda 2 is a great example of being tough enough to be rewarding. If you're unable to finish it, it's because of your own personal skill and patience level, not because the game is flawed. So that's what Mark, Cartridge Bros Player 2, wrote. Yeah, that's what we have right now for submissions for this month. I know we kind of got the message out a little bit later than normal, but I'm still glad we had some contributors to getting their comments into the show here.
Yeah, and we do make a point of tweeting out throughout the month. That's usually the best way to keep tabs on the show at Cartridge Club NA. So we will call out for those, and we do. With this new live show approach, those who are here watching live can also have the opportunity to voice their thoughts there. We also allow our patrons priority on thoughts on the game as well, if they have them. So a couple different ways that you can get your voice heard on this community impressions section, just so you know for future months.
Sorry. I gotta do the outro here now, right?
Yep.
All right. All right, well, that's the show, everybody. So I want to thank our panel for being here. Aaron, where can we find you online?
I'm just everywhere and nowhere.
Do you have any plugs you want to shout out here? Sorry, we should probably let's do this again here. Let's rewind it. So let's do it one more time here.
And we can inform everyone that it's pronounced Winter Ion instead of Winterion, which is what I thought it was pronounced when I joined. But yeah, so I guess shout out to my buds at Winter Ion Game Studios. And that's the only people I know.
Perfect. Michael B., where can we find you on the internet?
I am MichaelBtheGameGenie on YouTube, at MikeBGameGenie on Twitter. My Instagram name changes depending week to week, but I'm on Instagram too, Facebook, Tumblr. I don't know. I can't remember everywhere I'm to. Mostly on YouTube.
Great. Thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. This is a lot of fun. It's very nice to be able to discuss a game I really love with people who I can't say also love it. So it's a nice contrast to have someone in the mix who dislikes it, because I feel like more people dislike it than not. So yeah, it's been fun.
Well, you guys were fantastic guests, so thanks for being here. I hope I wasn't too hard on the game that you guys like, but I'd rather be. I guess I'm gonna be just a little over the top on that one. So, but for myself, you can find me on Twitter at ItsRocketSauce. I also have an Instagram where you can find me. I post most of my little pickups and collectibles on there. Yeah, and that's where you can find me. I'm also usually on the Tuesday Hangouts for the Cartridge Club. You can sometimes see me there. Yeah, that's where you can find me. Musty, yourself, where can we find you on the internet?
Yes, most prominently, you can find me on Twitter at MustyHobbit. Lately, I have been regularly streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/MustyHobbit. And I do have my YouTube channel, which is Second Breakfast. So you can check out that. Of course, all of the content that I put out tends to get pushed onto the Cartridge Club website, so I'd encourage you to check that out at www.cartridgeclub.org. One of the things that will be prominent there is next month's Game of the Month. And next month, we are playing Shenmue. And this will be a first time for me, and this will be the opportunity for people to voice their thoughts on this game, because I think, Ryan, you love this game, don't you?
Oh, this game's a palate cleanser from this month. So, yeah, I love it. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So I know.
So whenever Ryan's done playing a hard NES game, he goes and looks for some sailors, I think is what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of itself for people who love it or hate it, but I'm in the category of people who love it. So
Fair enough. Well, so that'll be our game of the month for the month of May. So if you are interested in playing along, please feel free to do so and tweet at us again at Cartridge Club NA, or you can check out our forums over at the Cartridge Club website as well. We'll be discussing the game with a few of people who will be with us on that month's show as well. I do also want to mention our sister podcast put on by Curtis, and that is Cartridge Club Portable. And for the month of May, we are playing Lilo and Stitch on the Game Boy Advance, which is surprisingly a Metal Slug clone. And you should definitely check it out. Curtis puts on a great show. So I encourage you to play along there as well, or check out the podcast, which happens to be on the same exact audio feed as well. So we are going to give a wrap there, but I would just want to say to those of you who are interested in supporting the club beyond a review on the podcast app of your choice, I'd like to again mention that the club is entirely funded by pledges made from members of our community. We're extremely grateful to those supporters. And if you're interested in becoming one of them, please check out our offerings at patreon.com/cartridge club. We look forward to seeing you again next month. CC Unite. All right.
Been like 5 minutes of awkward silence.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see how long we can hold this thing out. But yeah, so there we go. We're still broadcasting. The chat is still here, but I do want to just again acknowledge to those guys. Thank you for being here and for enjoying this live. This is something that we decided to do this month and going forward. So, and again, thank you to both you, Aaron, Michael, for being our guests for this. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks again for having us. This was a really good time.
Both were first choices too for guests. When me and Musty discussed it, it was right away. We were like, these two.
I'm honored.
I'm glad you both accepted, because then we didn't have to go diving for anybody else.
True enough.
Yeah.
Both of you were both at one point that we saw that you said you liked this game.
When they announced it for the Switch NES Online, both of you had commented about it at that point, and we were like, let's put that in our back pocket for later. And so
I'm not gonna lie, when I was asked, I was very excited, but I also dreaded playing through this again. I love it, but it really is a grind, like at times. And I was like, I don't know if I have it in me. I'm trying to get through a couple other games now. Like, I love Cartridge Club Game of the Month. I think it's amazing. But then, like, you'll pick a game like Shenmue, and I'm like, I really want to play Shenmue, but I've got Legend of Leggy over there, and I really want to play that too, and I'm trying to get through that. So, I mean, like, it's so hard to fit stuff in, and especially, like, I'm an old man now, and I got a little girl, so trying to find time, it's challenging, but I'm glad I did this, and I'm glad I went back and finished Zelda 2 again. And plus, I did it on my NES Classic, and I got, like, a kind of a personal side quest going where I want to beat all the games on my classic. So thanks for getting me to do this so I could knock that one off.
Is it hacked by chance?
I have two, one that's not hacked and one that is hacked.
So are you going to try to beat everyone that's on the hack machine, or?
No, God, no. Just the NES Classic itself. I'm gonna try to do both of them. And like, I've never beat Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and I've never even imagined beating Ghosts and Goblins. So both of those are big pillars for me.
Yeah. Well, we've got one of our club members, J-Rock Game Rocker, has a whole bunch of videos on his channel about beating Super Ghouls and Ghosts. If you need anything to help push through that.
Ghouls and Ghosts on the Genesis is significantly easier than both Ghosts and Goblins and Super Ghouls and Ghosts. So if you want to tackle something a little bit easier in that same department, I'd recommend.
But those aren't on the classics.
I know.
Those certainly.
Oh, Ghouls and Ghosts has to be on the Genesis Classic they're releasing. They can't release that without that.
There's still, 10 more games to announce for that?
I think 20. I think it's 40 games total. They've announced 20 so far.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's going to be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Okay. Well, I don't want to keep you guys up. It's already, you guys are an hour ahead of us, so it's already past 11. So
get to bed.
But thank you again. This was great.
Thanks for being here, guys. I really appreciate you guys stopping by and helping
Yeah,
out with the show here.
This is a lot of fun. Thanks.
Sweet. And we'll let you know when the audio version's out, and then we can let you break out the trumpets and announce that it's here. So
Yeah, give us that link.
we will. Oh, I like it. Big. we gotta end on that. There we go.
Gotta.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Have yourself a good night. And again, chat, thank you for being here. We'll see you guys real soon.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.